The moose is a massive creature. Although the extra size and body fat is necessary in order to survive the colder areas they inhabit, considering their size and strength, it's hard to believe that the moose would ever need help. That's what leads to this incredible story of a man who saved a moose, and the interesting gift he was given. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. For Erikas Plukas is a Lithuanian farmer. He lived a perfectly happy and simple life, content with what he had. Although that all changed during a walk home from work in the woods when he encountered a moose in the woods. Lying on his path home, right in front of the gate was a baby moose. This was actually the first time that Plukas had seen a moose up close. Initially, he was afraid to approach as its mother might have been nearby. But after checking the area, he determined that the moose was all on its own. The conclusion that Plukas had come to was that the moose calf's mother had been killed by hunters. Forced to flee on her own, she became exhausted and injured, ending up on Plukas' front door. He said that the first sight of her was heartbreaking. Knowing that the calf was still unsafe, he took her inside of his home. In Plukas' own words, the moose was starved, dirty, sad, and her fur was infested with flies. Yet he scooped her up and took her inside anyway, but upon entering his home he realized that he didn't know the next thing about taking care of an animal, let alone treating one's wounds. Well, and at first Plukas tried calling his friends, but they weren't any help. They told him to just put the moose back outside and that it was illegal to keep her in the first place. Instead, he called animal services. Unfortunately, no one could help him until the next day, and they asked him to take care of the moose until the next day. Plukas didn't know where to start, so he did his best. He got some milk and leaves and left it with her to eat. And the sight of her eating actually made him crack a smile. He then began to make a makeshift shelter. He was doing his best, but he was still looking forward to the help from animal services the next day. He could barely sleep that night from the apprehension. The next day, however, animal services informed him that they couldn't help with the moose. Instead, they suggested a frightening idea to call the local hunters. They suggested that they would know what to do with moose, but Plukas wasn't having it. Plukas knew that hunters had a cruel way of handling wild animals, and he never wanted this calf to suffer again. So Plukas asked animal services to let him take care of the moose. This resulted in a long argument. Animal services reminded him of the dangers of wild animals and the legality of the situation, but Plukas wouldn't budge. In the end, animal services agreed to give him the right to take care of the moose. With the right to nurse the moose calf, he thought it was time to give her a name, and thus he decided to name her Emma. Plukas didn't think of the situation of him just taking care of a wild animal, though. He thought of it more as though he had just adopted a child, and Plukas ended up becoming quite the doting father. He gave her all the attention she needed, and Emma certainly appreciated his efforts. She became incredibly comfortable with Plukas in turn and missed him whenever they needed to be separated. But Emma never really felt safe whenever Plukas wasn't around, and that included when she needed to sleep. So Plukas started sleeping with her, sometimes in the barn, sometimes in the open. It just made sense, as she was afraid of everything but him. Despite their happy living arrangement, Plukas knew that she would one day have to return to the forest, so he started to help her get adjusted to nature once again, and he started taking her out into the forest. Initially, Emma seemed petrified every time she went into the forest, but after a few trips, she started to adapt to the environment. Walking by Plukas' side helped feel more comfortable, and he taught her what was safe and what was dangerous. Plukas didn't just teach her basic safety, though, but also how to get her own food. And when she started to eat in forest, it became clear that she was actually starting to enjoy her time there. Soon, Emma started to venture into the forest all by herself. And soon, Emma started to venture into the forest regularly. She seemed excited and would often be out for the whole day, only returning after the sun had set. While Plukas was happy that Emma knew where she belonged, he still felt sad every time she left and was constantly worrying about her safety. One particular night, Plukas worried deeply when Emma did not return before the sunset, and while he spent all night waiting, she never came home. She was gone for several days. At first, Plukas could do nothing but worry, but then he realized that Emma was now a fully grown moose. It was time to let her go. He found it hard to do, but he had to remind himself that his sole purpose in her development was nursing her. But after some time, Plukas was about ready to T0 move on. He missed her, but knew she was where she belonged. But then, one day, Emma had appeared right in front of his house. He was overjoyed by the visit and savored the day. He didn't think it would happen again. But the very next day, Emma came back to visit him again. She was waiting for him on his doorsteps for him to wake up. And several days passed like that. They would play whenever Emma was around. Pluka's family started to get worried about this strange development, but he was adamant that Emma was nothing but kind and loving with him, despite being a wild moose. However, Pluka still was worried about Emma, despite her now being an adult moose. That was because she was now vulnerable to hunters. Every time she left, Plukas had wished he could make her stay, so he came up with a way to keep her safe, even when they couldn't be together. It was pretty risky, but Plukas went to the hunters to ask for their cooperation. He invited them to his home and introduced them to Emma. His goal was to show them that she was more than just a potential target, but an intelligent and loving animal. To Plukas' surprise, the hunters had agreed to not hurt her. While Plukas couldn't quite understand why, the hunters explained that they could see the bond the two of them had. It would have been a real shame if they had decided to break it. Plukas was already happy that he could at least a little peace of mind when it came to Emma's safety in the forest. But he just received more good news over the next couple of days. Other hunters had also agreed to not harm Emma. As a matter of fact, they agreed to stop hunting wild moose altogether. He had never expected his bond with Emma to have such a big impact. Things were already looking up, but then Plukas had even more good news. Looking at Emma, Plukas noticed that she was starting to look bigger. As it turns out, she was pregnant. Since meeting Emma, Plukas had become incredibly happy and content in life. And while he had saved Emma, Emma had saved him as well, and now she was about to be a mother herself.